film community here in Washington State has been up to and doing, and then just narrowing it even further down into the Tacoma area. And I just hope that you engage. We want this to, it's an intimate gathering, and we want
Converge Media up in Seattle, another black-owned media company that's really been killing it the last couple of years. They've been around for a minute, but they've really come into the spotlight over the last couple of years. A lot of community storytelling, and one of the things about it is working with Omari Salisbury, their founder, is as another black-owned media company, a lot of times we get pushed to compete, but I think for us, a part of competing is collaborating because we want to compete on a higher level in the market. So that's kind of what we're doing. So that's been very engaging and also very tiring because I think I'm getting old, but I'm not sure. So
Definitely not.
I'll let y'all know. That's the
My name is Amy Lillard, and I have the great privilege to run two nonprofit organizations that support the creative economy in Washington State. One is Washington Filmworks, and Jeff serves on our board, as a matter of fact, and Melinda happens to sit on our Film Leadership Council. And then the second organization is called WhipSmart. It's a place for all creatives to get inspiration and information about how to level up. So if you're looking for things like, how do I do an invoice? Or how do I pay my taxes as a freelancer? Or how do I create a creative resume? Like, a lot of that is on there, and we're doing a mentorship program shortly. Wynn happens to be the chair of one of those boards. So, but my career in film, and I have been at Washington Filmworks forever, but I started my career out of New York and LA doing marketing and public relations for film, back when indie film was, indie film. You could go to Sundance and sell a movie. So my claim to fame is I did the original Blair Witch Project, so blame me for that. And I just had such a great run there. It was so fun. It was like Boys Don't Cry and American Psycho and like, I got all the weird ones. I don't know what that says. But it was great. I was working too much, and Blair Witch kind of ruined me because it was like perfection, right? It was just like, I loved the filmmakers, I loved the movie, I loved the experience. So I threw myself a retirement party and went around the world for 2 years. Moved to Seattle. Was trying to figure out how to make a career in film here, and I was like, that's not working. And so I lobbied to get the incentive passed forever ago, and I've been there ever since. So, and conversations like this are the things that keep me going. So thank you for being here.
James Winters. I'm a cinematographer, gaffer, and when the stars align, a director. I grew up in Hollywood. Was not really interested in filmmaking. My parents were artists and painters, and I was going to be a painter, and I went to art school, but fell in love with German expressionism, Max Ernst, our piece. Went to art school, then kind of started playing with VHS video and doing experimental artwork and adding that into my installations. Graduated, couldn't get a job as a painter anywhere except for actually mixing oil paints at an oil paint company in Portland where I moved to. And got a job at the film school in Portland and started working in their equipment cage and started making projects. And then got hooked up at Will Vinton Studios, which has evolved into Leica now from Caroline. So I learned how to light film by lighting miniature sets, which was a great education because the DPs and gaffers there were really experienced, and I learned how to light a city kind of at scale, so it was really cool. And then moved to Tacoma, following my wife as she went to grad school here, and have kind of worked my way into the Seattle film community and am doing it. And right now I am surviving as an indie filmmaker, 6-day documentary, independent documentary feature, and my sleep schedule is all jacked up. My body is just wrung out right now, so.
We're grateful to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm sure that a lot of people here understand.
Yeah.
My name is Claire Chen from Claire Chen Productions, LLC, and what am I saying first?
That looks beautiful on you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually born here. This is where I was born. So I even did a high school project of how important independent cinema is at a time where independent cinema was really distributed to the masses. A little bio on me. I grew up when I was like 8 to 10 years old, and I watched Jane Campion win her first Oscar, and then flip the channel, I saw Christiane Amanpour report the news, an award, like one of the first kind of women to report the news when bombs were going off behind her. And I thought to myself, I studied broadcast journalism where I learned all the film production side of things and directing and all that. It was more talking heads type of stuff, so I knew that I felt after I graduated school and I minored in theater and all that, learning all these different things would prepare me for ultimately the 15-year journey that it took to zig and zag in a place like Seattle, out to bigger markets, to be a filmmaker and a storyteller and things like that. And so I grew up during a time where Joy Luck Club was on, and then there was a 20-year gap. Maybe there was a little bit of All-American Girl, 20-year gap, and then we have Crazy Rich Asians. And then now we're seeing everything everywhere all at once. So it was a really interesting time in media and film and the zeitgeist of like, there's not a lot of people that look like me. Can I even, there's not a lot of female filmmakers, cinematographers. Can I do this? There's not a lot of women reporting in war-torn countries. Maybe I can do that. And anyways, it was a 15-year journey of like self-mentoring and teaching myself every aspect of the field to be a filmmaker. My current film, Shelter in Place, which is rotoscoped animation as well as live action. I shot it in live action first during the pandemic and everything like that after brain surgery with my cat in my apartment. It was a very independent filmmaking at the Scraps and Finest. It ended up going to Cannes. It ended up going to a film festival in Beverly Hills. Now it's going to go to Australia in a month. It did really well, but it took more than a decade to get there. And so I love panels like this because I love to, think tank and share what I have done that can save you time to not do in your career. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here, so thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeff Bearhan. I'm a Gila River and Navajo, a Bitterwater people of northern Arizona. I don't feel like I have as an illustrious career as these people over here, but I started as a stay-at-home dad, taking care of 2 boys. Their babies, raising them from infancy, and I was living over on the East Coast. My parents were back in Arizona, so I started just making little videos of them. And it's just when the digital age kicked off, and you could go to Best Buy and buy a camera and get the editing software on your computer, and so I started learning how to do that. After a while, I learned that this is really fun. I enjoy it, I like it, and I'm good at it. So moved to Washington because we wanted to get back to where there are more native people. They were all removed at 1830, west of Mississippi. Here in Olympia, there was no film organization, no film. They had a theater, but they just showed films. So I put an ad in Craigslist, and people came. 3 people, just 3. But that's all we needed, 4 people, yay! We met over coffee and decided to make a film together, and that was the first short film the Olympia Film Collective made 10 years ago. So that nonprofit's still around, so that's how it got started. And then, obviously, filmmaking doesn't make any money. Sorry to break that news to you. So I started a production company, Skybear Media, with one of the guys that we made that short film with. And it's kind of been fairly successful over the 10 years. And so it kind of coincided and grown together, the nonprofit and the for-profit. And that's what brings me here today.
Thank you. All right, we've got a few questions, and then we're going to open it to you all because you are here, and I'm assuming there's interest, or there's a topic, or there's a reason why you're here. We want to make sure that those are covered. And we can just go popcorn style on this. So
The first one is, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing as a filmmaker today, or what have you learned that you want to share with the group not to do, So,
Inspired by Claire.
yes, yeah, I thought that was so great. Anyone?
Well, I think over-promising is a huge challenge, because when working in the budgets and the time frame schedules of independent film, we all have caviar taste, and we think we're going to be able to, create something that will hold up against, Hollywood production, because that's the expectation. The audience that we're speaking to, the media consumer, has been taught by Spielberg and all the greats, and so when they watch our stuff, they're expecting it to be on par with that. So it can be really tough, because we want our work to really look to have that finish. But if we overschedule, if we overpromise, it's going to be a challenge, because there's going to be a lot of compromises that get faced on the day.
We just grab a random, okay, I'll grab my popcorn. But I would say, what was like tips or what you wouldn't do? What was
what are some of the things that you learned? You kind of briefly mentioned that, but you can dive into a little detail.
Seattle's an interesting place, regional wise. And I think every team kind of will try to grab what we think we know how to do in a film set. Like, I know I've worked on various film sets where, paid or not, where we'll be like, okay, we'll grab some of the Hollywood standards, but some teams will grab maybe not the best standards or the cons of a bigger system into a smaller kind of intimate independent film system. For me, what I learned is just kind of hodgepodging, like, okay, well, what works in a bigger production that I can bring to a smaller production? I worked as an actress for free before I got representation for 10 years, and I thought, well, even though it's a student thesis film, I can always learn from observing as an actor first, because that can better make me a more informed director with how to make, film for me is like project management. Do you know what I mean? It's like a typical project management. And I also worked in banking for my day job, so it was the only thing that I could pair that wasn't a non-art job, right? And so I kind of had the left and the right brains working at the same time. So something I learned over some years is that I went, people in Seattle deserve to have a well-run set, whether they're paid a lot of money or not, to have collaborations, to have relationships that grow from here, to be able to be empowered to say, hey, we made a small film here and we want to be competitive nationally or internationally. So I felt like, well, what can I do as a leader? I didn't read a lot of film books. I read more like business leadership books. Like, what can I do as a leader to ensure that's an environment I serve on my little tiny film production company sets that I entered into film festivals and stuff. So I remembered that the left brain informing the right brain what to do is so helpful to creatives that you are managing, the departments you're managing, no matter how big or small. Like making sure the call sheet's out, making sure that people know, if actors are there, making sure that they know, they're Polaroided and they know what their look is, and being able to available to answer any questions that the DP might on color schemes, or just doing as much homework as I could before I reached out to a team of people, making sure the writing's good, even if it's a 10-minute film, like making sure it's something that people want to sink their teeth in. There are DPs like you that are craving really good material to film, and then there's actors out there who are like, you know what, I'm craving to do acting work that really shows what I can do in my reel. And so I think collaborations aren't always exploitive. I didn't start out with a ton of money. I still have a ton of money for my productions, as well as paid productions aren't exploitive either. I think it's both out here in this region. So I think just having a broad mind of not keeping in our silos of cliques and trying to cross over and work with as many different people as you can, diversify. Because when you go into the bigger league that you've come from, right? You start to realize I don't have a lot of time to make mistakes or put my crew or cast in a position to make mistakes. So, and I think everyone's empowered to. I don't judge anyone who wants to have a career that just stays in Washington, and I don't judge anyone who wants to leave Washington to go to a bigger market like LA or New York. I just want to be the filmmaker that can give opportunities to both sides if possible, so.
I think for me, when I look at challenges, you know, they're ever evolving as an independent filmmaker, right? I mean, first is to find the time to be that filmmaker. You know, weekend warriors, you know, we shoot over the weekends or we do things like that. Then pathways, I always talk about pathways because if you intend to evolve in this, then at some point you're going to want these films to be seen or distributed or things like that or produced at a higher level. So I think one of the greatest challenges for me that has persisted through the years is finding the resources at the different levels in order to move forward. Right, so at one time, of course, you run into a crew thing, then it's equipment, you know, moving up that ladder and chasing the cameras, you know, and then, but for me, the one that has persisted is finding producers, right? A producer at the level that really is, you know, because on the independent level, we wear many hats, right? Usually, you know, it's like that old living color skit, hey man, we're the producer, the director, craft services, and the janitor, you know, so there's that mindset, but as you look to really expand, and in this time, when distribution has become so diverse in a lot of ways, I mean, you know, we can, you know, we streaming right now, we're around the world already, you know, so it's just a matter of connecting to people who want to exchange value, whether it be just to watch your film, or whether it be to pay to watch your film, or whether it be to pay to invest in your next project. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I've found is maintaining the level of resources that you have to move through the different levels that this industry has kind of placed upon us. You know what I'm saying? Like this gray right here is real, and what used to, what used to satisfy the beast, so to speak, is not necessarily the same thing now. Especially when you're looking at trying to move the needle in communities, bring other filmmakers up, and have their experiences be different than yours. Because it's a thin line I found between, you know, what you were talking about, like really good production. Sometimes it's just knowing the rules, right? And I happen to get with a great set of folks when I first. Seattle has had great independent film communities since I've been here. And I mean, when I go to Atlanta and work in Atlanta, Memphis, New Orleans, all these different places, I always tell them, man, we had such a film community that, I mean, we could call, it was a bunch of little different groups, you know, it was Nimble Productions and this and that, Kurt Nordstrom and their group, but we could all call each other. We were each other's resources. And as you move up and be more intentional about really making a way or a living, I should say, then, you know, those resources become more and more crucial. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is kind of keeping up with the resources necessary to move the needle, whatever your needle might be for your strategy and career.
Talking about obstacles, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, resources, or no, excuse me, that was.
I would say,
Challenge.
yeah, it's sort of like the biggest thing you want to convey seems to be like the top level.
I guess there's a couple things. Like when you're starting out, actually, no, all the time, I think the number one obstacle is the story. Choosing the right thing. Not everything that, you know, is created should be made. A lot of times you get bogged down in that, or you get attached to that, and it starts pulling you down. Yeah, choose wisely, right? I don't know, what's that? Might be from Spider-Man, but whatever thou art, act well thy part, right? Meaning, do what you do really well, okay, and be professional about it. That's, I guess, the second thing. Choosing the story and be professional about whatever it is you're going to do in the film industry. Because everybody's watching, you know, people are looking at you, how you present yourself. not just within the film industry, but like for instance, if you got to go find a location, you got to go talk to people. If you got to, you know, present a business card, you know, tell them exactly what you're going to do, present them a contract, and if you can, pay them. Always, you don't always have to pay when you're starting out. You don't, obviously you don't, but it helps a lot. And kind of going along at every level, the resources is an issue. When you get to a certain point, if you're being professional, not paying people is unprofessional. So that's, everybody hits that, that's when the whole finance thing comes in. And hopefully you've been professional enough and have been building those networks long enough, inside the industry and outside of the business community, with the community that you reside in, that they know you, they know you're professional, and that they can trust you to do what you're telling them to do, asking them to do. So you put all those things together, and I think that you can overcome a lot of stumbling blocks along your film path.
Amy, can you talk about, I mean, so you're not a filmmaker, you work with the state and the challenges that you've come up with and what you've been able to do also.
I have such a different lens, and I'm assuming most of you are filmmakers, yes. So our job is to facilitate film. So we run the film office and we run the incentive program. And you know, consistently, it is access, right? That is the challenge. It's like, how do you find the financier? How do you find, like, how come some people get free gear? How come some people, you know me, right? And I have this wonderful story about Wynn, who I didn't know, and he just kept knocking on my door, right? And I was like, yes, I'll have coffee with you. And little did he know I would make him the chair of one of my boards. But, you know, access is hard, and consistency and network is the most important thing. Even since I've been the film commissioner, I had Matt Ross, who is an actor, come into my office one day, and I was like, Matt Ross, what are you doing here? He did a brilliant film called Captain Fantastic here. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. But also, he's someone I worked with in New York. He was my first, he did a movie called Ed's Next Move. He was like the actor in it. And he ended up in my office. So the industry is small, right? And getting access to people is just about tenacity and grit. And being brave, and you need that network. So that's what I'm saying.
I appreciate all the hard work that you've done for our film community, really. Just a little real quick, and get off and go back to the panelists. But I did my first film, and it was Asylum, and it was like 8 years ago. And I reached out to Amy's office, and they came. Not only did they get me like a slew of locations. I mean, Amy's team really supports the indie filmmaker. I mean, I have done no directing at all. And this industry is so remarkable in the fact that like people will come and collaborate and will support with you if you say what you're gonna do and you do it. And I reached out to Amy's team and I'm nervous, you know, like I've always done acting in front of the camera. And I said, hey, I need this location, this is what I'm looking for. And they sent me a list of stuff. And then they showed up on site at the location. I mean, when you get that kind of support, you want to do good. And you should also give that kind of support to the people you work with so that they come back to you.
All of the things in the film office are free. We have a location database. We have a production directory where people go to find crew. We have a person who picks up the phone to answer questions. We have liaisons all over the state of Washington. So if you want to go film in Roy, Washington, I always use Roy, Washington, but if you want to go there to film, we have someone on the ground who's an ambassador to help you get permits, find places to, cater, find, and if you're like, I have no community, where do I go? Like, inevitably, we'll be able to help or send you a resource. All of that is totally free. Totally free.
So I feel like, Melinda, we know how you would answer this question, but I'd love to hear, and from Amy again, what is the on a positive note, the best resource that you have come across that you would want to make sure everyone knew about? Now you have the podium. And we'll just go down the line this time, so I'm looking at you, Win.
Easy for me. People. The best resource, the best, the best, the thing that keeps you going, right? When everything else fails, is the people that show up for you and bring their talent and bring their, and like you were saying, like to pay them, to at least always make them understand that you know their value. You know what I mean? And I really lean into the people. I mean, even in my storytelling, I come from the people's perspective, I always say, because I'm in the community, and that's where I get the stories from. And so, you know, my team and I mean, Sean Coates is a great director of photography out of Atlanta, who is, you know, locked in. His story is a great story. You know, his brother, Corey Coates, is a great writer. Up here, man, the Zero Collective was the cast that I ran into in Seattle, and I was just standing and holding the light on their first film, and then we made, you know, many films, and it was just, I mean, that the resource that has never been a challenge is the people, and so that's what I think is the most positive thing. The folks that you work with, that you value with, that lend their talent, their expertise, and can really take you to another level, because if you don't know, you find somebody that knows, now you know.
Same. I mean, we, at some point I'll talk about the revolutionary change that has happened at Washington Filmworks recently, but we try not to do anything without being informed by community. So the Film Leadership Council, which Jeff is the chair of, is, you know, we have people from all over the state who participate, and you know, there's interesting work happening. But it's, we exist to serve you, right? That is why Washington Filmworks exists. And so we don't do anything without community input. So that's what I say.
Well, I was going to say people. So I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to say it's yourself. And it's your passion, it's your wherewithal, it's your tenacity, it's your belief that within you, through the hardships, through the difficulties of networking, of any, you know, personal generational trauma that you might be dealing with, you will find the answer if you work for it. I am of a certain age, and I've been doing this long enough that I, you know, though I haven't reached the success that I may have imagined I would by this age at this point, I understand that I can and I will, through continued efforts and continued tenacity, learn your craft. This is it's an art, you know, it's cool, it's all this, but the making of film is a craft. Every aspect of it demands expertise. Pick something, get really good at it. The wealth of resources right now just available on YouTube, I promise you, those were not there 20 years ago. I mean, you had to get on set, you had to get hazed, you had to get really worked over to learn how to use a C-stand. And, you know, now you are, you know, how to use a C-stand. So, have your vision. As Jeff said, make sure that the message, the story that you're trying to tell is worth telling. Be sincere and get feedback from your friends, from people. Make sure that your story is good, and then just laser and work hard, sweat, grind. Don't give up. There you go.
Well, James, I think you're successful in my eyes. You're successful. And I think maybe a tip I had to give myself on like the 4 films I've worked on is that working on art jobs to make the art happen for free, and ultimately where I was putting my own like few thousand in it. I think what's interesting about independent film, what's empowering about it, and sometimes what's heartbreaking about it, it all happens at the same level simultaneously at once. Is you're kind of a Swiss Army knife. You know what I mean? You have to like know how to do a little bit of everything, and I think the limitations can lend to more creativity in your storytelling. And I also knew that having a humble mind and knowing I'm not just building my own career, but I'm surrounding people from like acting class that I worked with or grew up with, or maybe a Microsoft commercial I was booked on when I finally got an agent in my early 30s. You know, it took like 13 years of trying to zig and zag to get in. I'd say for me, it's like the limitations. I mean, we can have a separate panel about how to fund your film once you get, everybody here is on various levels. There's some DPs that only do commercials, and yes, they should only ask for pay, you know what I mean? And there's people like me doing independent film, trying to grow my business and other people's collaborations with me. I think what was really educational for me is to meet colleagues where me and the other colleague were at the middle of our careers. And they had a skill set and I had a skill set, and when we came together, it was just not just me and one person, but just various people that you're always keeping at the back of your mind. You're not just growing your dreams, but you're bringing a group of people up with you to grow their dreams as well. And that the limitations, and I'm very upfront with like, I can't pay you on this, but this is what a copy credit meal, it's only for a weekend, it's only for a day, super organized and making sure we get that shot for you for your actor's reel and things like that, or cinematography reel. And so I just meet like-minded people, or it's like a skeleton crew, that we make sure that we're making a story that reaches everybody nationally, internationally, doing well at film festivals to grow collectively all of our businesses together and dreams together. And I think that's really the true spirit of independent film in whatever city or state or country you live in, is that tribal village mentality, and encouraging that in Washington, which is a tech city. It has all these different like identities going at the same time, evolving at the same time, but I think always keeping in mind that the limitations in the beginning could be a roadblock, it could be easy to quit, but understanding the limitations can lend, it could be the way to tell your story creatively and with a group of people where you're growing your careers together because you're all evolving together. So I try to keep that mindset whenever things get tough. And then when you break through on the other side and you do well as a team, it's a very gratifying feeling.
So James stole mine, YouTube. Yeah, the internet, just a vast, a lot of information there. You can learn everything you need to know. So there's no excuse, right? But, you know, I would push you to focus, you know, that resource, learn about business, learn about legal stuff about that, because you're going to be dealing with that in a lot of different ways. Like before I was a stay-at-home dad, I tried law school. It's lame. So I got out of law school and went to acting school, which was fun. A lot more fun. But my best classes were contracts and legal writing. And that has been very helpful when it comes to film and also just running my business. So I would strongly suggest that when you do that research, or you may start that education or continue it, whether it's in the internet or in school, focus on the business side of how things run. Focus on contracts because they're so important.
I'm learning so much about Jeff.
Well, I'm learning so much about all of you, and I'm loving it. We want to hear from the audience some questions that you might have. Just raise your hand, and we'll, if you don't have questions, I can't believe that nobody has any question at all. Paul,
No, I got one. The whole AI thing, the strike is over now. What do you guys feel as filmmakers? I'm hearing that people going to YouTube all automated. No face. They can type in their chat, whatever prompt, and the YouTube will spit out the whole, not YouTube, but the app will spit out the entire YouTube video.
It's just technology. You're always gonna have to compete with somebody. Each one of us sitting in here is AI of our own. When the digital hit, the cinematographers, film cinematographers like, this is it. Everybody gonna come get cameras. They don't have to know as much lighting. And I was like, hey man, it just got thicker. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that, you know, you should have to compete. You know, those who come in now got more resources. Like, I mean, YouTube, man. I mean, man, I remember just getting there used to be this video tutorial series that was only on. They had a version on cassette tape. I mean, a whole film school thing, and then they had all these things you could get, and you could never find them. You know, and they were so expensive, like to pay for these things. And so if you got a hold of one, man, you coveted that. You know, like this, you know, there were these little things, but. Yeah, I think, you know, AI is another, I mean, when I saw Dragonheart and Sean Connery was that dragon, I knew we were going to be dealing with that down the road. So, anybody who's surprised, man, you got to look forward, okay? So, I mean, you know, it's another tool, and that's what it is. It's another tool. That's where I see it.
I think we're still, I think we're still at a point where they can't monitor, or they can't copyright material that's, you know, not created by a human. So until that threshold gets crossed, we still have a fighting chance.
I think, you know, AI can never replace the uniqueness of human beings and what they have to say in art. And I will say, the most summarized version I can say, because this is a really great question, that could be like 3 more panels about it, what artists feel about it. I don't think, I worked at a bank where we had a counting machine, and then my district manager came in and said, you know, push the apps, you know, they don't need to come into a bank. And then all of us tellers were like, oh my God, are we gonna lose our jobs? What we realized is that we didn't lose our jobs, it just helped us do our job better. Now, do I think that we should scan an actor's body, name, and likeness in a Super Bowl commercial, not pay them? No, that's what I think the strikes were for, is to renegotiate contracts in this new technology, how we use it as a tool. If we can't film, like if I wanted to film a battle scene in Tacoma or on a field, I can't hire 10,000 Army soldiers, but we could do a little bit of AI, but making sure that all the people that are the real people in terms of the principals are seen and paid and compensated and credited and all of that. And so it's ChatGPT. I mean, can an AI bot replace like real authentic screenwriting and dialogue? I don't think so, but do I see like well-known screenwriters that use it as kind of like an intern? So it is a tool. I think we're still, with any new technology, going from film to digital and all the evolution we go through, I think as a community, as artists in the world, we're gonna have the necessary dialogues. And I think that's kind of why I'm glad that the strikes happened. I'm not happy that my colleagues didn't have work for a while, but I'm also happy that they advocated for themselves and said, hey, we need to be compensated for the tools we're going to collaborate with. That should replace our name, likeness, and our copyright and things like that, intellectual property. And so that's the most kind of, I guess, summarized version I can say to the AI, the evolution in making films.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes.
What about dealing with analysis paralysis? I mean, many of you talked about you should only make those films that really matter. But at what point in time do you overanalyze it and say, okay, I'll do this. Well, no, then I won't. And then you end up just not doing anything. What did you do about that? Did you ever experience analysis paralysis to the point that you gave up?
Go ahead.
Okay. I started with a script consultant on my 10-minute scripts first, and so I realized screenwriting is the blueprint to building the house. If the screenplay isn't good, or if it doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end in a 10-minute short format, which is not cramming in a feature-length material mat. So I worked with script consultants, my screenwriting teachers from LA and New York, and I just said, do you think it's greenlit to even come to my community and shoot this for a week? And they said, I think it's ready to go. And so that's what I did to get past analysis paralysis, to make sure that it's on the page. The cinematographer, art director, anyone or actor can look at it and be like, I understand we're all making the same story. So that's what helped me. I started with the writing first and the blueprint to the film first. If it didn't work out, then I wasn't gonna make that film. So that's what I did, so.
Yeah, everyone's a critic, so if you share your work, they're gonna come back with all sorts of notes. And I did an exercise. I got sick on the day before New Year's, and so I couldn't go out on New Year's Eve. So I was like, I'm gonna write a script, and I have a location, which is this awesome tugboat in Seattle, like big spooky ship. So I wrote a script over New Year's Eve and into the next week, and I was like, okay, I got it. And then I started sharing it, and everyone was like, well, what about this? And so I've been reworking it now all that time. I think the tugboat is still there. But it's a real thing, and you know, sometimes you gotta get out there and do it, but you know, once you've done it enough, you know that sometimes it is best to wait and make sure that it's right before you strike.
I mean, some of the most brilliant movies that I had a chance to work on, like Darren Aronofsky's Pi, Requiem for a Dream, I did Memento. Like, all of those are brilliant, by the way. You should definitely see them. They didn't know anything. They just decided to do it, right? So I think there's that aspect of it as well. You've just got to do it.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too that, you know, just keep in mind, I mean, all of you that we have our streaming platforms now, and the video stores before that, and the cable networks before that, and just know that everything that's made, whether Hollywood, lots of money or not, is not always good. And everything that didn't have and didn't know and doesn't always come out bad, you know. So I think the thing is to be, you know, convicted, right? Is to have that conviction that you're going to see it through regardless, you know. And as far as the analysis paralysis is, it's always something you'll fight against, because as you go, I mean, I think I'm going through it right now because I can tell my filmmaker's ready to shoot, right? My executive is like, hang tight. My filmer's like, you've been saying that for 5 years. You know, remember those multiple hats, you know, so I mean, the thing is a lot of times the thing about our industry at the independent level is you can learn no matter what. So if you get out there, I mean, I learned a lot on the film that I didn't make, right? I mean, that's how I knew how to go into the next one. But the first one, man, you know, I mean, I was on a journey. In fact, I was in Alabama. I had done all of these things. And Spike Lee happened to be speaking at the University of Alabama. And one of the students knew we were out there shooting film and got us tickets. I told this story before, but it was such a changer for me because I was literally failing. I mean, had failed as I was sitting there. Like me and the folks that were here from Seattle that was in Alabama, we had done all we was gonna do. I knew we were headed home without a film made. And so I go and watch Spike Lee, and it's the first time I've ever seen him in person or any of that. And he tells the story about making his first film. And this is what he said. He said, man, I was in the bathtub. I was all shriveled up because I'd been in there as long as I could stay. Because on the other side of this door, I'm about to walk out and tell all of these people that the check is not in the mail. It's not coming. I believed my last lie and told my last lie. And as I'm sitting there, right, hearing this, I'm like, oh, well, shit, if Spike Lee went through this, then I'm on the right path. Although I knew that I was about to, you know, I mean, they threw a party for me in Centralia, Washington, man. They got a banner, you know. I was about to go back with that banner and all those names still written on it without a film. But, you know, I think, you know, the thing about it is, if you're truly true to the art, your filmmaker will make you get out there, you know. And sometimes you got to listen to that because sometimes the only way to overcome that is to not be paralyzed and get out there and do something that you can, you know, stand on, you know.
Jeff, did you want to add anything to it?
You know, they say there's the three phases of the project, one that's written, one that's produced, one that's edited. Each of those, you know, people put in their little creative spin. So if you're unsure, pass it on to the next person. Pass it on to that. Find a good director, you know, and they'll tell you, you know, right away if they're going to do it or not. If they do, dump your plate, you know, and then it's going to go on to the editor. They're going to make their own thing. So, you know, pass it forward.
I think that's so wise, and I say that about edits, you know, like, if you show your edits to a group of people, because they're only going to make it better, and if you can't do that, if you have fear doing that, it's a problem, right? So, I think the more you write or rewrite or things like that, or edit, you know, it's gonna get better, so I really do appreciate that.
Amy, actually wanted to go to you before we go back to questions, because you and your team have been doing a lot of hard work, and just want you to have the opportunity to update the people in this room, what's been going on, and then if you have a panel specifically, right, coming up in later this week that you can tell them if you want more.
That's happening.
Oh, well, never mind. Bad.
It's on my calendar. I love to go.
Well, we love you.
And just to reintroduce Amy for anyone new that came in, Amy is the head of Washington FilmWorks. FilmWorks, one word if you want to Google it. But just we've been sort of referring to you as just in case everyone missed the introduction or the slide. So we've been talking about an essential resource is. I want everyone to be able to look you up.
Thank you. Filmworks.org. I tried to be a filmmaker for 9 seconds, and I just said no because I couldn't do it. I line produced a short film, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm better on this side. So you know, part of the discussion today is like resources and like how to like break down walls and barriers and things like that. So in 2022, we passed a bill in Olympia, and for those that took part of that in terms of showing up and hearing, like talking to elected officials or things like that, that's how shit happened. That's how.
It's all good. It's all good.
I can bleep it out.
AI already took care of that.
Well, this is not live streaming, it's going to my phone, so.
But there's power in politics, and I would love to have a cocktail conversation with you all about that at some point. So we got a bill passed, and it increased funding for Washington FilmWorks more than 4 times, so we have 4 times more funding. And within the bill, and I really want to give shout outs to Myron Hartman and Malcolm Pellis, who are our equity chairs. We, you know, Hollywood has been talking about this for a very long time, about wanting to change the dynamics. And in many ways, Washington FilmWorks is leading the country and doing some really interesting things. For example, we are able to give additional dollars back. So the incentive, if you don't know, is a return on what you invest in state, right? So if you spend $1 million, we're going to give you $300,000 back on what you spend in state. Generally, that's how they work. We will give you additional dollars if your project is telling the story of a historically underrepresented community, right? So instead of getting 30%, we'll give you 40%, for example. And we're doing that because we would love to see different lived experiences on the big screen, or the little screen, or any screen, really. So that's one thing. The other thing is, what we know from our history, you know, we take great pride in the fact that we helped launch the careers of people like the late great Lynn Shelton, Megan Griffiths, S.G. Churros in our core, like all these women, right? Well, we want to do more for filmmakers who are from underrepresented communities, and to that end, we went to Malcolm and Myron helped me and our lobbyists and our team put together a package that got in the bill. So we have $750,000 a year to support workforce development for underrepresented communities. That's manifesting itself in 2 ways right now. One is what we're calling the Above the Line program. So it is an education component. So you're talking about, you know, it's a 12-week course where you're learning how to budget, how to market, how to work in Washington, and it's like lectures and panels. And then those 30 folks can choose to apply for a mentorship program. It's our version of the Sundance Lab. And so you can apply for that mentorship, and you get a mentor in Washington, and you get a mentor out of New York or LA to move your project forward. This is the board's, like, they took a big leap here, and so I want to thank the board for doing the great work and allowing us to do this program. But we're also on the flip side as well. So what we know is, like, that program is going to lift up new voices, right, and support new voices. The other part is the below the line part, where we are doing some training to, you know, it is very hard, and I'm just going to be very candid. Most of the people who work in the film industry who have the power are older white people, right? And so what we're trying to do with this program is change the dynamic and put people on sets to train, to get mentored, and to learn how craft. So those two things are happening concurrently, and this is just the beginning, right? So I acknowledge my own privilege, and I acknowledge I'm a cis white woman, and I know that, you know, I've been at this job a long time, so my job is to use my privilege and my power to change the dynamics, and that will be how we move forward. So,
I'm gonna clap for that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question from the group. Oh no, now there's no.
We could maybe try. I mean, if you guys don't mind, can we stay? Can we stay a few minutes longer?
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
so
we're
we
gonna
can
take
do
both of yours. Okay, because you got those hands shooting right
Mine's
up.
long, I'm sorry. Obviously, all of that is wonderful. A lot of it is kind of back-end tax stuff. I was wondering if the panel would be willing to speak to the challenge of funding and self-funding work in Washington State, which is obviously an issue for probably everyone here. So.
Yeah, and I would love actually just to add on to that, you know, since we're talking Washington State and the funding thing, if you can not just talk about the challenge, but if you have something that you're like, here's something like that the community could do, or like, you know, that, you know, Tacoma, the Grand, Washington Filmworks, if you have something with that you're like, I would love if I had this other resource that would help me find the funding, that would be great too, rather than, you know, instead of just, I'm sure we could go on and on about the challenges of it, so if you have something that's an idea, please put it forth. Should we go the other direction this time and start with Jeff?
When it comes to funding, I mean, I think really it goes back to your community where you live. I hope you're building up that community and getting to know businesses in your area, especially the ones that are film-friendly. For instance, I don't think the Olympia Film Collective would have been as successful if it wasn't attached to Steiger Media. So that, you know, nonprofit, for-profit, and then on the inverse, Steiger hires our people from the collective. So whether it's full-time or subcontractors. So in that way, it's kind of symbiotic relationship we had. And that allows Steiger to help fund projects, I guess, in that way. So I don't know where you're at, but find those companies that want to be a part of that. And it's up to you to develop those relationships. Like I said, be professional, you know, business savvy in that sense. I think that's helpful.
I started really scraps up with my first film, so I entered my first film in the inaugural year of AAPI, HBO's short film competition. And so luckily with the label of HBO, I was able to tap like people I knew in my improv class to be actors in my film or extras in my film. I promised them it would be like a day or less of shooting. I was on a television webisode that didn't really see the light of day for free, but I met some crew members out there. And so it really wasn't grassroots, and then I taught myself how to do Indiegogo the first time. I was able to be like, I raised $500 to feed my crew, yay, and it was a start. But I think the biggest business relationship that came, and at the same time too, knowing someone like Amy when you're starting your project too, knowing people in the community that you know that are 10 steps ahead of you that can give you advice along the way is also smart to combine that with starting grassroots up. But for me, doing it grassroots up, not knowing anything in the beginning when I did, was I actually connected with a real estate agent that I met through my day job who had on the side hustle, he had an Indian curry restaurant that he needed product placement for, that I didn't end up getting the grand prize for HBO to be shown on the regular programming. But it was a great business relationship I still have now, where he product placed, put a logo on one of the characters' bag of takeout food that had his logo on it for HBO judges to see. And so building, it's tricky, I know, but building that left and right brain sort of kind of project flow into your small film is what can grow those business relationships. It's a long view, so if you always know it's a long view. The first film you might not have as many sophisticated business connections that can help fund or sponsor or advertise or donate a location, but as you grow, then you'll start to see that network get richer. But I would say that was my first film experience to build out business synergy, to get the resources I need to finish that film.
I think there's probably at least 3 ways to get your movie made, especially as an independent film. And first starts with that material. So as a filmmaker, if you really want to consider yourself an auteur and this is my thing and you have to accept it or FO, that's one way to look at it. Or make somebody fall in love with it. Find somebody to fall in love with this project, and hopefully somebody with money. The next would be, I had 3 and I just lost one, but so I'll jump to the last one, which is donate your body to science.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, by hook or by crook, make it happen. Credit cards, blood donations,
Plasma?
If it means that much to you, you'll find a way to make it happen. And there was another one that was really good. If I remember it, hopefully before we're over today, I'll share.
I'm really glad you asked that because the board approved and we just had our first season of something called the Small Budget Production Initiative. We got a lot of feedback, again, please show up in the community because this is how we do things, that we weren't doing enough for the smaller budget stuff, and we weren't. And so the Small Budget Production Initiative, it is for projects under $1 million, and we can be first money in, which means that, this program. So you can be first money in, and then I can go to your fundraiser, and we give you a letter of support, and that is for all communities, right? We did have 78 applications. We, the board, approved. I don't lobby me ever. I have no, that's the board's decision. But we were able to approve 22 projects, and 2 of them have filmed. And one of them I was beating the drum for funding for them. So that's one opportunity. The other thing is crowdfunding can work, right? There's a couple of resources on the WhipSmart website of people who have done it well, and I think that is really key. And look at the films that were made in Washington, and look at who are the executive producers. What I know statistically, because we vet all of the financing on all the projects, is they're independent investors. They're not investing in the film because they think it's going to make them tons of money. They're investing in you as a filmmaker. So pitch, learn how to pitch, and look at that. Look at who's the executive producers. There's my helping hints.
I'll be very quick. It is still the Holy Grail, first of all. So there is no one answer that's going to get you. The thing that I will say is, it is a business, so know what you intend to yield. Be able to explain the return, so that whoever and at whatever level you get to talk to somebody, you can have a real conversation. The other piece is sell yourself. Oftentimes it's the magic that people buy into in our industry. If you can couple the magic with the return, then you have a fighting chance.
Thank you.
As promised.
Great, that's part of my question, so I'm really glad you asked it. But I also just wanted to ask specifically about film markets. Do you guys go to them? Do you see any value in that? Are there business relationships to yield from that? And also YouTube is helpful for the technical aspect, but for people who have not gone to business school, are there particular resources you would point to, or do you have any recommendations as to how we can beef up our business left brain situation?
First, there's books out there, still. I know YouTube is the answer, but there was these things called books that I have a whole shelf of them and still got them in a bin. And some of the greatest things that I've learned is that. And then also, and I mean really, like there's a book called Film and Financing that really kind of breaks down the generalness of how the business works. And a lot of that hasn't changed when you talk about distribution and how to get out there. So really go look at what's been made. Go look at how it was made. Go look at the deal that was done. The main thing is being knowledgeable so that when you hear something, you can go research it or go find somebody that can help you get to the end of that. But that's what I would say. There's a number of either books or people who are in that, like, that's where your internet resources will come, because the information is there. I mean, and let's just be real. What stops a lot of it is that this industry was closed for a very, 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 very long time. And a lot of the people who closed it are still in power. So that means you just have to be creative on how you use that information, right? So whatever fits for you, right? If there's folks in your community that's got money, then go talk to them, and you're gonna have to educate them, you know, because a lot of folks think it's you make something, it's a hit show, and then you keep on going. And there's a lot of business that goes into making a hit show.
My team, production team behind the film that I shot a few years ago called They Reach, which was a Washington State made genre adventure film, kind of throwback adventure film. They had an interesting experience at AFM where they went and, you know, you buy tickets for it and you can get in on day one, and it costs all this money, or day two, and da-da-da. Well, they saw somebody like walking around and they had their badge tucked into their pocket under their blazers. And they were able to basically sneak in on day one and get in front of a bunch of distributors, and found a lot of, you know, enthusiasm for what they were doing, and connected with somebody through that. Ultimately, they went with a sales agent, and the sales agent ended up being terrible. The film was leaked. A fake poster was made that was basically, the film has some relationships to, what's the Netflix kids in the show? Stranger Things. Like the poster was redone with the Stranger Things font, and it was like really just so. I mean, it was leaked in like Russia, and it got like, and then a bunch of bad reviews on it. You know, so all those kind of opportunities can, you know, can shoot you in the foot. It's tough. So that experience, even though they were really high off that when that happened, and they were able to get in there and get in front of people. Ultimately, you know, it wasn't that great of an experience. So I don't know beyond that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of markets.
You have us as a resource if you have any questions. I'm sure we all have our Instagram and websites and barcodes out there if you ever have any questions for us. And I would say, you know, when I started, I mean, I can't say my case study will apply to, or my template will apply to everyone, but I can share what I did is that I started small. You know, my first goal was, it's kind of like a school project. So when you start out, you have your group members and you're like, can I just get through the film being done and learning everything in the project cycle of that? I'm not expecting like a lot of laurels on it or whatever. In the second film, it was kind of the same thing, like some of the relationships in that. There are people in the community where producing is their thing too, like in your Facebook groups or film schools or whatever, where their dream is to be the producer or be the left brain person on your film. And so kind of looking around, learning from her colleagues and figuring out what their expertise are. Or I met a woman who's like, I just love like wardrobe swatches, and she loves wardrobe, you know. So there are people in the community that have their specifications that can really help you in the first film. But I would say be specific of your goal. I started small, and then each thing kind of snowballs into a bigger thing each time. One film, the lessons you learn from one film leads into the next film, to the next film. So.
Part of that education forum, just so you're aware, we are interviewing all of the instructors, so on all of the topics, the lawyers, the marketing folks, the finance folks, like all that. And we're gonna put outtakes of, like, we're interviewing them and putting it up on our website, so that not only the 30 people in that program benefit from the knowledge, but you're also gonna see that. The other thing that we're doing and taking advantage of, and we just did it at SIF last year, the Seattle International Film Festival, is they've got a number of really famous people and directors and producers that come in, and so we interviewed them. And we have outtakes of all of those interviews about the business of film, right? It's not like, or advice from film, including like an Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker and, you know, some local folks, and, you know, and again, it's to get to that. It's like we focus on the business side, and we're hoping that this will make it more equitable for access, right? So not just, you know, in Seattle, but across the state or wherever. And then also give you a foundation to work from.
Real quick, so I want to add to you asked a specific question about film markets and things like that. Go before you're going to sell a film, so that you know how they work, so that you can see what it looks like. Because I mean, first time you go to a film market and you realize that it's literally, you might just be walking from room to room. I mean, it's a different beast, just like film festivals where, you know, people used to think you could get a deal. But go to them as a form of research so that you can understand if it fits you and what you're trying to do. So.
Well, unfortunately,
Well, just really
no,
quick,
please.
we keep saying film business and stuff. Part of business and really, well, it's about, you know, whether it's just like when you work with people on set, you know, you want people to like them because you're going to be with them for a while, right? And it's the same in business. You know, you want to present yourself and be a likable person. That's just something that, you know, we think business with numbers, we think contracts, but no, it's first of all relationships. You know, your personality, what you've developed on, you know, to a certain point that you're able to convey, you know, artistically, intelligently, you know, emotionally, even your story, your project, all that stuff to someone, and you know, you're going to be successful at it. If not, practice.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to you guys. We're going to have to wrap up the panel portion, but please, you know, as Claire mentioned, follow these folks. I'm sure they'll welcome some level of inquiry and follow-up. Hang out here, go over to the lounge, which I'm reading off this poster, is across the street. And also real quick, because she didn't do it, a shameless plug for Melinda, who didn't mention that she is a filmmaker in this festival. Her movie is playing on Wednesday at 7:45, I believe, correct?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And talk about like starting and not know what to do or having the paralysis. I mean, that was me, you know, when I made Asylum, and it hasn't stopped. I still need to learn. There's still so much I need to learn, and I keep myself open to learning and recognizing where my strengths are and where my strengths are not, and be okay to say, I don't know, and be honest on your set. And I always say that what keeps me going is the desire of my heart has to be greater than my fear. And I have experienced, and I'm sure we all have experienced, a loss where we regret it so badly. Do you want to experience that in your filmmaking career? Because I sure don't. And this latest film, I'm very fortunate. I got the opportunity to go to Italy. I won Best Director, but I did it because it was something that was driving me, and it was just so passionate. And I created it. It looks at Cuba. It looks at the protests that happened, the uproar, a nationwide protest, in a communist country where the people are crying out and they're just in so much pain for people to help that they go on the internet and they cry out on the internet. And a lot of it's all been taken down. But for them to do it versus us, They literally, a lot of them have lost their lives. People can't find them. They're in prison. I got a connection on the island, and we smuggled footages back and forth and communicated through apps. So there's always a way, if you want to tell that story, but tell it from your heart and really care about it. Do not go off for the profit. Go because this is something that matters to you and that's really important. Come and check it out. I'm happy to answer any questions. I feel very fortunate that Tacoma picked it up. And it was all done through cell phones. So you can make something fantastic with what you have. It's just your heart has to be bigger than your fear. And then I wrote this quote. I'm a big person on quotes. It keeps me going, it keeps me moving, and it keeps me motivated. And this is the one that when I get out of my shower, it is bam right there, and I see it every single day. And it says, we attract what we are ready for. If something comes to you, that means you are ready for it. It does not mean you know every single step of the way. I mean, my gosh, I called Amy, and I'm just like on my first film, and I'm sweating, and I'm scared, and I'm nervous. And there's this fantastic guy named Tony Dupay, and I love him to bits and pieces. He was like my God, really, in the film industry here in Washington. He was on everything, doing so much, and I flew, got enough guts, and I was in this acting class, and I said, Tony, I got this. Oh, will you read it? I didn't hear from Tony for a while, and then I was like, I got to know what's happening. If Tony's going to co-direct with me on this or not, and I said, Tony, did you get a chance to read that script? And he's like, Melinda, can we have a conference call? I'm like, yeah, when? And he tells me, I'm like, okay, I can do it. I'm in my car. I'm like, yeah, Tony, it's me. And he's like, Melinda, done right, this will read like a poem. It was my first short film. It won Best Short Documentary at the film festival and Cinema on the Bayou. I saw fantastic films from around the world, and it just kept going. And I do not know everything. Oh my gosh, I've been applying to mentorship classes. I do not pretend to know everything. But I'm grateful for these people who made today possible, who share their wealth and wisdom with you. It's priceless.
We're grateful for you.
Stick around, schmooze. How long can we hang out in here, Paul?
We can hang out here all day.
All day you can
And get their information, support them. Look at the QR. Support them, follow them.